Chapter 226, Hot Searching. First, Jian Yun had nothing else to say. The two cousins were really similar in some aspects. They were so awkward when they were not serious. Jian Yun patted Huo Liancheng and insisted that he put her down. Then she remembered to ask Cheng Mu's, "Hey, how did you know there was a rabbit on my bedside table?" "One guessed it." Cheng Mu's pushed his glasses and said with a smile, "You can guess it?" Jian Yun was surprised. She had not seen Cheng Mu's for a long time and wanted to talk to him, but Huo Liancheng would not allow Jian Yun to talk to other men like this. He ignored her too much. "Let's go, let's eat." Huo Liancheng held Jian Yun's waist and walked into the office without any explanation. As soon as they sat down, Huo Liancheng saw Cheng Mu's follow them in. Huo Liancheng looked at him coldly. "What are you doing?" "Let's eat." Cheng Muze answered very naturally. "It's been a long time since I last ate the dishes Aunt Kai cooked. I miss it so much." Huo Liancheng saw that Jian Yun had already taken out the food in the thermos. He narrowed his eyes and nodded. "Okay." With Cheng Mu's around, Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng did not say much. Furthermore, she knew that Huo Liancheng never spoke during meals. It was probably a rule that had been established in a big family. The three of them buried their heads in their food. Jian Yun was about to go and clean up the dishes when Huo Liancheng held her hand. "Sit down." Then, he lifted his chin towards Cheng Mu's. "You take care of it." Cheng Muzi pouted. "Fourth brother, I knew you were not that easy to talk to." However, Cheng Muzi still stood up and cleaned up the table. Jian Yun took out her phone and habitually opened Weibo to browse. When she saw this, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Hey, you're famous." "Me?" Cheng Muzi looked at him. "It's not you. It's President Huo." Jian Yun pointed at the trending Weibo and smiled. "It's already the trending #1. A lot of people are paying attention to it." "What news?" Cheng Muzi was also very interested. He took out his phone and started Weibo. "Yo, fourth brother, the video of you singing last night was posted on Weibo. Right now, it's being watched by netizens." Huo Liancheng walked over and took the phone from Jian Yun's hand. He casually flipped through it. Jian Yun was reading the comments. Many people were queuing up to call her husband. Some of the comments were not pleasing to the eye. Huo Liancheng frowned and looked at Cheng Mu's. He said unhappily, "So what are you still doing here?" "Haha, don't. Fourth brother, look at how popular you are. You are the new national husband. How much do people like you? Don't you think so, Sister Jian?" Cheng Muzi looked at the comments and laughed. He did not want to move at all. Yes, it's very fun." Jian Yun nodded. Huo Liancheng did not have much news. She estimated that his subordinates would take care of the news and prevent his photos from appearing on the unofficial media. Although he had a lot of fans on Weibo, there were very few street photos. "I don't like it." Huo Liancheng was not only a germaphobe, but also a germaphobe. Seeing so many people lusting after him made him feel as if he had not taken a bath for 3 days. Jian Yun was excited. Seeing those passionate comments, she almost laughed to death. It was too funny. "I say I don't like it." Huo Liancheng saw that Jian Yun did not listen to him at all, and his handsome face immediately darkened. Jian Yun then looked up at him. When she saw his gloomy face, she quickly put away her smiling face and used the corner of her eye to glance at Cheng Muze's. Cheng Muze faked a few coughs and got up to go out. "I will deal with it now. I'll go to work." Jian Yun also wanted to leave. "Don't go." Huo Liancheng was in a bad mood, and he did not spend a while alone with Jian Yun. He would not let her go. "I will go to the bathroom." Jian Yun turned around and ran to the washroom. When she came out again, she found Huo Liancheng sitting on the sofa. He was leaning forward with a phone in his hand. He seemed to be looking at something. Jian Yun walked over, and just as she stretched out her head, she saw Huo Liancheng reach out his hand and grabbed her hand with great force, bringing her into his arms. Jian Yun was used to being intimate with Huo Liancheng now, so there was nothing she could do about it if she was not used to it. She had no right to refuse. She continued to look at Huo Liancheng's phone. "What are you looking at? Does your stomach hurt?" Huo Liancheng did not answer her. Instead, he touched Jian Yun's lower abdomen and asked her. "It's okay. I was in the hospital a while ago. Senior Yin came to see his mother and took my pulse. He even gave me a kind of pill that he made himself. It doesn't hurt this time." She had already had 2 menses in front of Huo Liancheng. They were all underwear and sanitary pads that he gave her. She did not have any face, so she did not hesitate and directly talked about it. When Huo Liancheng heard her, he took his hand away. Jian Yun took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "Didn't it not hurt?" Huo Liancheng asked. "It doesn't hurt, but it doesn't feel good either. It feels good when you rub it." Jian Yun bared her teeth. Huo Liancheng smiled as well. He was very happy that she was no longer afraid of him. "You still haven't told me what you're looking at?" Jian Yun was still curious. "Looking at Weibo?" "Yes." Huo Liancheng nodded, but kept his phone as if he did not intend to let Jian Yun know what he was looking at. Jian Yun narrowed her eyes. She felt something was wrong. "Do you know how to swim?" Huo Liancheng rubbed Jian Yun's stomach and suddenly asked. "I don't know how to swim." Jian Yun did not know why Huo Liancheng suddenly dragged her to swim and looked at him in confusion. "Do you like watching people swim?" Huo Liancheng asked again. He looked at Jian Yun with narrowed eyes, as if he was smiling. Jian Yun heard him and immediately stared at Huo Liancheng alertly. Why do you suddenly ask this? Go swimming with me at night. Huo Liancheng smiled. Jian Yun had a bad feeling about Huo Liancheng's smile. When Jian Yun returned to the Human Resources Department, lunch break was almost over. She covered her mouth and lowered her head to sit on her seat. She quickly took out the makeup mirror from her bag and looked at it. She had just been forcefully kissed by Huo Liancheng. She did not know why he liked kissing her so much. She told him that if she went too far, she would be discovered and he would not listen. This was good. Her mouth was really swollen. How was she supposed to meet people? Jian Yun took out a layer of almond paste and applied it. At this time, Sister Xiao suddenly walked over. Jian Yun, do you have any insider news? Do you know who was selected to go to the CEO's office this time? Sister Xiao smiled and asked Jian Yun. Why go to the CEO's office? Jian Yun was confused and did not know what Sister Xiao was talking about. It's about President Huo saying that he wants to choose a few secretaries in the company. Sister Xiao pushed Jian Yun to the side and sat with her as she said, yeah, you forgot, but it's also true. This matter has been going on for almost a month, and many people have forgotten about it. I didn't expect that there would suddenly be news today. President Huo wants to choose a secretary? Jian Yun heard this and her eyelids jumped. She had a bad feeling. Before Sister Xiao could finish her gossip, the computer suddenly rang. It was an email reminder. She opened it and saw that it was an internal email from the company. The contents of the email was as Jian Yun expected. She was selected. Chapter 227. Aren't you tired of it? Haha, I knew you would be chosen. Jian Yun, congratulations. Sister Xiao also saw the contents of the email. She clapped her hands and said with a smile. After discovering the relationship between Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng, she guessed that Huo Liancheng, who did not use a female secretary, suddenly wanted to recruit a secretary. There must be some other motive. Sure enough, she guessed it. Jian Yun was selected to be the CEO's secretary. Vice Manager Chen heard the sound and quickly walked over. He said with a smile, Congratulations. Jian Yun has gotten a promotion this time. Don't forget us old colleagues in the future. When the surrounding people heard Sister Xiao's words, they all looked over with envy and hatred. That's right. Jian Yun must take care of us. When Jian Yun heard these compliments, she could not feel happy in her heart. She did not want to be Huo Liancheng's secretary. This way, she would face him at the company during the day and see him at home at night. There was no sense of distance at all. Even if he did not bother her, she would also be annoyed. Jian Yun, why do you look unhappy? This is a good opportunity. If we can have it, we will be overjoyed. Someone saw that Jian Yun did not speak and thus asked. Jian Yun could only pull the corner of her mouth into a forced smile. I don't quite understand. Did President Huo choose a beautiful or capable secretary? There are so many people in the Human Resources Department who are more experienced than Jian Yun. Why did he just choose Jian Yun? Suddenly, a female voice sounded from the crowd. It was a very gentle voice, but what she said made everyone raise their eyebrows in understanding. For most people, if a colleague who was similar to them suddenly got promoted, they would be mentally unbalanced. It was just that some people would not say it out loud. Jian Yun looked over and found that the person who spoke was Ma Jingjing. This morning, Ma Jingjing looked at her with unfriendly eyes. Are you questioning President Huo's way of looking at people? Jian Yun smiled. She naturally would not take such a person's words to heart. However, she was not a person who was willing to suffer a loss. She had to get back at him. How would I dare to question President Huo? Ma Jingjing quickly cut ties with him, but then she covered her mouth and smiled. She deliberately used very ambiguous tone and said, However, I still envy you. Jian Yun, it is good to be beautiful. There are many more opportunities than others. These words were clearly meant to make everyone feel unbalanced. It also misled everyone that Jian Yun relied on her beauty to get to the top. If this were to spread, Jian Yun's reputation would definitely be damaged. Ma Jingjing, what nonsense are you talking about? How does President Huo choose people? Do I need you to teach him? Vice Manager Chen scolded. He felt that this Ma Jingjing was too unreasonable. Anyone who found out about the relationship between Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng could only rush to curry favor with her. How could this woman still mock and ridicule him here? Could it be that she was not afraid that Jian Yun would criticize her in front of President Huo? It was a matter of minutes before the president wanted to fire someone. Furthermore, with Huo Liancheng's ability and background, no other company would dare to ask for someone he personally fired. I'm not talking nonsense. What I said is also the truth. Jian Yun is originally pretty. Look at our Human Resources Department. There are many male compatriots who like her. Ma Jingjing said with a smile. She changed the topic and said, I just want to remind Jian Yun that using sex to serve people won't last long. I hope that even if she enters the CEO's office, she will do her job well. This way we will also be proud to follow her. Then I must thank you for your concern. Jian Yun was not afraid of Ma Jingjing. She could tell that this woman must know her relationship with Huo Liancheng. That was why her words were full of thorns. Every sentence she said wanted to make her feel uncomfortable, but Jian Yun would not mind. She glanced at her eyes and curled the corner of her mouth. She said with a smile, Also, beauty is only temporary capital. But there is a saying that people should not care about the long term. They should only care about having it in the past. Ma Jingjing, am I right? What do you mean? Ma Jingjing said angrily. What do you mean? Can't you tell? It's useless for you to be jealous of Jian Yun here. You might as well go to her entire face. Then maybe you can look forward to being chosen by President Huo. Jing Zikai mocked. Jing Zikai, do you like Jian Yun? Why do you always help her? Ma Jingjing did not dare to argue with Jian Yun, so she vented her anger on Zheng Zikai. But Zheng Zikai was not afraid of her. The two of them started arguing. Okay, stop talking. There's a call from upstairs. Jian Yun, pack your things and move to the 28th floor before tonight. Vice Manager Chen picked up the phone and immediately came over to convey the order from the CEO's office to Jian Yun. Right. Vice Manager Chen, didn't you say you wanted to recruit 5 people? Which 4 are there? Sister Xiao asked curiously. There is also Chen Ziga from the planning department and Zhang Shaolin from the market department. Vice Manager Chen counted 4 people with his fingers. Other than Zhang Shaolin, they are all men. Furthermore, Zhang Shaolin is too much. Someone rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Jian Yun heard these names. Although the others were not familiar with them, she still knew Zhang Shaolin. She was a woman in her 40s and her son was about to go to university. She was famous for risking her life. She was Miedui Shitai from the marketing department. Huo Liancheng actually chose her as his secretary? You guys talk. I'll go out for a while. Jian Yun could not sit still anymore. She wanted to ask Huo Liancheng what he wanted to do. Jian Yun went up to the 28th floor. The door of the CEO's office was open. Cheng Muz came out from inside. When he saw Jian Yun, he immediately raised his eyebrows. Sister Jian, you came so fast. Are you impatient to meet 4th brother? Boring. She glanced at Cheng Muz and walked into the office. Huo Liancheng sat behind the desk with a cigarette in his mouth. He was reading documents when he saw Jian Yun come in. He took a deep breath and pressed the remaining half of the cigarette butt into the ashtray. Why do you want me to be your secretary? Jian Yun asked. Didn't you want a raise? Being my secretary, your salary is high. Huo Liancheng stood up with a smile and walked to Jian Yun's side. He reached out and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. He really loved her slender waist. Her waist looked thin, but it felt soft. It felt so good. But I don't want to be your secretary. Jian Yun patted off Huo Liancheng's hand and took a step back. Why? Huo Liancheng frowned and his handsome face darkened. Jian Yun lowered her eyes and did not look at him. Do you hate being with me? Huo Liancheng only thought of this possibility. So last night and today, she only welcomed him on a whim and made fun of him? Jian Yun felt the aura around Huo Liancheng turn cold. She knew that he must have misunderstood, so she hurriedly explained. No, I just feel that being together every day makes me sick of it. Are you sick of it now? Huo Liancheng's brows relaxed when he heard that. He held Jian Yun's hand and asked, Chapter 228, I don't want to be a vase. I don't feel sick of it now, but... Jian Yun lifted her eyelids and glanced at Huo Liancheng. We were together when we got home from work. We didn't see each other when we raised our heads during the day. Don't you think it's not good to be so distant? What's not good? Huo Liancheng asked. I'm tired of it. Jian Yun pouted and lowered her head to glare at Huo Liancheng. Aren't you tired of it? Let's talk about it when you get sick of it. Huo Liancheng walked forward again and held Jian Yun in his arms as he rubbed her ear. What do you mean when you are tired? Bye-bye? Jian Yun avoided Huo Liancheng's face and asked. Impossible. You haven't said you love me. Huo Liancheng flicked Jian Yun's forehead. I told you this morning. Jian Yun covered her head. You don't have any sincerity. Is that counted? Huo Liancheng said unhappily. You are asking for a lot. Jian Yun complained softly. Huo Liancheng lowered his head and wanted to kiss Jian Yun, but this time before he could touch Jian Yun covered her mouth and nose and refused. No, it smells like smoke. Go and rinse your mouth. Huo Liancheng turned around and picked up the teacup on the table. Jian Yun took the opportunity to slip out of Huo Liancheng's arms and quickly ran out the door. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Huo Liancheng turned his head and looked at Jian Yun's waving hands. The corner of his lips slowly curled up. 4th brother, your smile is so wide. It seems that your relationship with Sister Jian has progressed very smoothly. Cheng Muz had poked his head in from outside the door, pushed his glasses, and said with a smile, There's good news. Do you want to hear it? What? Huo Liancheng took a sip of tea and asked casually. Just now, my informant in the Human Resources Department told me that before Sister Jian came to find you, someone in the Human Resources Department said that she was chosen because of her beauty. Do you know how she got back? Cheng Muz kept him in suspense. How did she get back? Huo Liancheng was interested. She said she doesn't care about the long term. She only cares about what she used to have. Cheng Muz smiled. Sister Jian is so sensible. 4th brother, you can rest assured. Even if you are tired of breaking up, she will not pester you. Did she say that? Huo Liancheng put down the teacup and narrowed his eyes. He hid the dark light in his eyes. Was this the girl's true thoughts? That was why she was willing to try to get along with him. Did she do all this just so that she could part ways with him a year later? Although it was Huo Liancheng who brought it up first, he only did it to comfort Jian Yun. She always misunderstood that he had other motives for getting close to her and was unwilling to accept him. He could only resort to this. Who knew that he would actually entrap himself in it now? Fourth brother, you have made a move, right? Cheng Mu's put his hands in his pockets and walked into the office. He leaned against the wall and looked at Huolian Cheng through his glasses. You have been telling me that you are looking for someone to work as a professional manager for people in Huo's and Claude. I remember asking you, is this person really that important to you? You told me that this person was indebted to you. You must find him. What are you trying to say? Huolian Cheng narrowed his eyes. Now you say Sister Jian is the person you are looking for, but you do not treat her like a benefactor. Cheng Mu's expression became serious. Why should I treat her as my benefactor? Huolian Cheng sneered. You can't imagine what she means to me. Do you love her? Cheng Mu frowned. I should have thought that you would be so desperate to find her. I am sure that Sister Jian is not bad, but have you thought about the attitude of the family? You will know when the time comes. Huolian Cheng seemed reluctant to talk about it. All right, fourth brother, I sincerely hope you can succeed. Cheng Mu shrugged and said with a smile. He turned around to leave, but he turned back after a few steps and asked, By the way, have you heard about my aunt? Huolian Cheng nodded. He and Cheng Mu were cousins, and the aunt Cheng Mu mentioned was his aunt. Should we send someone to follow her? Cheng Mu asked worriedly. Aunt is old, and she hasn't brought any servants with her this time. I don't know if she'll get used to it. Let Grandpa think about it. Whoever has a wife will worry. Huolian Cheng did not seem worried at all. Cheng Mu nodded. That makes sense. Then, fourth brother, I want to know what kind of job I should arrange for Sister Jian if you bring her here. It would be best if you could get closer to me. Huolian Cheng squinted his eyes and smiled. The thought of being able to get along with Jian Yun from now on made him feel comfortable. Fourth brother, Sister Jian will hate you. Cheng Mu trembled. He turned around and walked out after saying that. The president's office gave the order. The Ming's was surprisingly efficient this time. In less than an hour, the 5 selected people had already taken their positions. The empty office of the secretary on the 28th floor had become lively. Cheng Mu had already arranged work for everyone except Jian Yun. Seeing the other 4 people who were super powerful in the Ming's quickly enter work mode, Jian Yun stood beside Cheng Mu and stared at him with her eyes wide open. Where am I? What am I doing? Cheng Mu waved at her. Come with me. Jian Yun thought Cheng Mu wanted her to do something, but she did not expect him to lead her directly into the president's office. What are you doing here? Jian Yun quickly grabbed Cheng Mu's hand that pushed the door open and asked alertly, I'm arranging work for you. Cheng Mu lowered his head and looked at Jian Yun's hand that was placed on his wrist. His smile was harmless. What kind of work? Jian Yun suddenly had a bad feeling. You will know when you go in. Cheng Mu pushed the door open. Jian Yun saw Huolian Cheng standing in front of the window, talking on the phone. He was speaking in French. Jian Yun could tell he was talking about business, so she did not disturb him. She sat on the sofa and waited. Cheng Mu did not come in. The door was closed. Huolian Cheng saw Jian Yun and said a few words to the other side of the phone. He hung up the phone and walked towards Jian Yun. What kind of work do you want to arrange for me? Jian Yun asked him. Accompany me, Huolian Cheng said. Jian Yun stood up angrily. Huolian Cheng, what do you mean? What do you mean? Huolian Cheng knew that Jian Yun would have such a reaction, so he was not in a hurry. Instead, he folded his arms and leaned against the edge of the table to look at her. I don't want to be a vase. Jian Yun lowered her anger, because reason told her that it was no use to be angry now. Moreover, in the company, Huolian Cheng was her superior, so she could not be petty. So she said seriously, although I really want to get a high salary, you are humiliating me by doing this. Do you want me to be scolded by someone in the Mings? Who dares to scold you? Huolian Cheng's face darkened. Someone will always guess why you want me to come up here. Jian Yun said helplessly. She knew that Ma Jingjing was definitely not the only one gossiping in the dark. Then what do you want? Huolian Cheng asked. Chapter 229 Windcatcher. Let me go back, Jian Yun said. Impossible. Huolian Cheng rejected her immediately. What a joke. He had put in so much effort to get her up. He was worried about those wild bees and butterflies around her. How could he allow her to go back? Then arrange work for me. Jian Yun pressed her forehead. She did not know what was in Huolian Cheng's mind. How could he make such an idiotic decision? Okay. Huolian Cheng stared at Jian Yun and said in a deep voice, I will instruct Cheng Mu. Then I will go out. Jian Yun lowered her head and turned to leave. Wait. Huolian Cheng grabbed Jian Yun's hand and hugged her, kiss her, and then leave. Jian Yun frowned and said discontentedly, I forgot if you didn't tell me. I was just about to tell you not to touch her in the company. After saying that, Jian Yun slapped Huolian Cheng's hand away like she was chasing away flies. She took a few steps back and distanced herself from him. Just like that, in the company, you and I are bosses and subordinates. We cannot have physical contact. All right, I'm leaving. Do you really have to be so clear? Huolian Cheng looked at Jian Yun's back and asked. Jian Yun pretended not to hear him. She opened the door and walked out. Huolian Cheng smiled and smiled. He shook his head and picked up the phone to call Cheng Mu's. Jian Yun just went out and saw Cheng Mu's answering the phone. Seeing her come out, he smiled and put down the phone. He waved to Jian Yun. Sister Jian, from today onwards, you will follow me and be my secretary. Okay. Jian Yun agreed very readily. As long as she could not get in touch with Huo Liancheng, she could do anything now. Then I will tell you what you need to do normally. Cheng Muze introduced the daily work to Jian Yun and assigned tasks to her. Then he called someone to move the desk. The 28th floor was mainly made up of the CEO's office and the secretary's office. Cheng Mu's, the special assistant, had a large room outside the CEO's office. Now that he had a secretary by his side, he naturally needed to clean up the desk for Jian Yun to use. The tasks that Cheng Mu's instructed were very efficient. Half an hour later, Jian Yun was already sitting in front of the desk. She started to handle the tasks assigned to her by Cheng Mu's on the computer. Jian Yun did not see Huo Liancheng before she got off work. When she finished her work, she was about to go to the tea room to pour water when a hand stretched out in front of her and a "thank you." Jian Yun bent the corner of her eyes and smiled sweetly at Cheng Mu's. No need to thank me. Fourth brother gave it to you. Cheng Mu smiled gently. Jian Yun blinked and saw a few people walking out of the secretary's office out of the corner of her eye. Special Assistant Chen, today's work is done. Do you have any other work? Zhang Xiaolin was the first to speak. She also glanced at Jian Yun at the same time. Today is also your first day here. You don't need to work overtime or anything like that. We, President Huo, are the most gentle bosses. It's almost time to get off work. Pack up and get ready to go home. Cheng Muze looked at the four of them and squinted his eyes with a smile. Jian Yun had just drunk a mouthful of milk tea when she choked. Cheng Muze really dared to say which part of Huo Liancheng could match his gentleness. Jian Yun, give it to me. The youngest man among the four saw Jian Yun cough, so he handed over a tissue. Thank you. Jian Yun smiled and took it, but it was useless to just hold it in her hands. Okay, since there are no work arrangements, we will get off work. Zhang Xiaolin was considered experienced in the Mings, and her ability to work was outstanding. However, she was too rigid and did everything in a straight line. That was why she got the title of Miezhui Shitai. Cheng Mu's nodded. Zhang Xiaolin took the lead and walked towards the elevator. The other three men followed behind her because Cheng Muze had arranged for Zhang Xiaolin to be the director of the secretary's office today. Zhang Xiaolin had just pressed the elevator when she suddenly turned around and asked, Jian Yun, are you not leaving? Jian Yun looked over and shook her head. There's still some finishing work. I will leave later. Zhang Xiaolin nodded and entered the elevator. Chen Zige asked Jian Yun, I remember that you live in the XX sector. I also live near that area. I will wait for you to go back together. I have a car so I can bring you. Jian Yun quickly shook her head. No need. I have an appointment with a friend and I will not go home. All right then. I will leave first. Chen Zige smiled and waved his hand. When the four of them took the elevator and left, Jian Yun heard a cold voice by her ear. Are you very familiar with him? Jian Yun turned her head, and only then did she realize that Huo Liancheng had quietly appeared behind her. She bit her straw and said, Not really. In the past, when the company expanded, they were in the same group. Don't talk to him in the future, Huo Liancheng ordered coldly. Huo Liancheng, don't you care too much? Jian Yun got angry when she heard that. Who do you care who I talk to? Are you in the company now? Huo Liancheng did not answer. Yes. Lian Yun was confused by his question. Since it is in the company, I am your superior. Do you listen to what your superior says? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes and had a cold expression on his face. Jian Yun was so angry that she gritted her teeth. This shameless man actually used her words to stop her. Can the two of you consider my feelings as a single man? If you want to show off your affection, can you show it after I leave? Cheng Mu's touched his arm and shook it exaggeratedly. President Lu will hold a banquet tonight. You go. Huo Liancheng threw a sentence to Cheng Mu's and instructed Jian Yun. Come in with me. Fourth brother, you are the one Director Lu invited. What do I look like? Cheng Muzi was not going to do it. I have something to do tonight, Huo Liancheng replied. At the same time, Zhang Xiaolin was standing in the elevator closest to the elevator door as usual. The three men behind her started talking. Did you guys hear? The company is spreading rumors that Jian Yun was booked by President Huo. She was transferred because of this. About 30 years old, a very skinny man said. His name was Wang Xiaojian. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you believe in the matter of catching wind in shadows as well? Chen Ziga said unhappily. I don't think so. Didn't you see that President Huo went to the Human Resources Department's gathering last night? He even sang. They even recorded the video. Later, someone saw President Huo and Jian Yun pick up by the side of the road. Another man who looked to be in his 40s pushed up his glasses and said, he was also an old employee of the planning department, Zhang Fan. Is that true? Chen Ziyi looked a little upset. I heard it all. Who knows if it's true or not, but Jian Yun is the one with the least experience among the five of us. She has only been in the Mings for 3 years and she has never had any presence. The day President Huo came to inspect the Human Resources Department, he suddenly took off her glasses. Later on, many people noticed her. That's why she was transferred here. It's hard to guarantee that she won't attract rumors and speculation. Zhang Fan explained. Chapter 230. Do I cry when I see you? Why are you guys gossiping like women? Since President Huo has chosen you guys to come up, he doesn't want you guys to comment on his private life. Zhang Xiaolin frowned and her voice was very cold. The few men immediately shut up. Take advantage of this opportunity. You all know what it means to work for President Huo. Zhang Xiaolin was still cold. Sister Zhang is right. We know the meaning behind being selected by President Huo. Compared to the Huos, the Mings is barely qualified to be a subsidiary company. If you don't want to be chased away because you talk too much, then talk less and do more. Zhang Fan nodded in agreement. Since they were able to be in the middle and upper echelons of the Mings, they naturally had high standards. If they had the chance to go to a better place, why would they miss the Mings? Haha, we were just talking casually. Wang Xiaojian laughed out loud. Do you dare to say anything in front of President Huo? Zhang Xiaolin glanced at him coldly and mocked. Besides, even if Director Huo likes Jian Yun, it is understandable. A man and a woman are not married. It is not an improper relationship. When Zhang Xiaolin finished saying this, the elevator also arrived at this time. She walked out without looking back. As expected of Mijue Shitai, tsk. Wang Xiaojian stared at Zhang Xiaolin's back and laughed awkwardly because he could tell that Zhang Xiaolin's unjustified relationship was referring to him. He had an affair with the female secretary and had just divorced a year ago. Be careful that Sister Zhang hears it and you are dead, Chen Ziga said as he walked out of the elevator. Haha, Chen, what are you going to do tonight? Going to the bar with brother? Wang Xiaojian hooked his arm around Chen Ziga's shoulder. No, I'm going home to watch the game. Chen Ziga declined. It was time for them to get off work. When they came out of the elevator, many employees saw them. Some of them were familiar with each other, so they gathered and asked them about the 28th floor with envy. Was President Huo very strict? Was he busy with work? The few of them could feel the envy in everyone's eyes. They didn't show anything on their faces, but they were still very proud and excited in their hearts. However, compared to their work, everyone was clearly more interested in Jian Yun being selected. They were all asking around. Chen Zige and Zhang Fan could only not explain clearly. President Huo had his own reasons for choosing people. Only Wang Xiaojian had a mysterious expression as he whispered to everyone. After Jian Yun followed Huo Liancheng into the office, she thought that he wanted to do something to her again and deliberately kept a distance from her. She did not expect that Huo Liancheng did not do anything. He just tidied up the documents on the table and asked her to help him get his coat. He carried the thermos for lunch and walked out the door. Do you need anything tonight? Jian Yun was confused and followed behind him. She did not know why this young master looked so cold. Yes. Huo Liancheng walked out of the door. Jian Yun turned off the lights and closed the door. She then picked up her clothes and bag and followed him into the elevator. Why don't you go to the banquet? Jian Yun felt that Huo Liancheng was a little strange. His life seemed to be very monotonous. Other than working, he read books or held video meetings at home. For a super rich man, this kind of life was very abnormal. I don't want to drink. Huo Liancheng looked at his watch. Jian Yun held it in and asked, why don't you go out and play with your friends? Play what? Huo Liancheng turned to look at Jian Yun. There was a light in the elevator. He was too tall. The light from the elevator spilled down and half of his face was hidden in the shadows. Jian Yun tilted her head to look at him. The elevator was too small. The moment he came in, the place was filled with the lethal hormones. It made her heart beat faster and faster. Aren't you rich people supposed to play cards, ride horses, play ball, and drive a yacht party? Jian Yun asked curiously. These are just games that let you relax during your free time. You have to work normally, so how can you play every day? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes. Are you curious about my life? No, I'm just curious about how rich people live. Jian Yun curled her eyes and bared her teeth. She did not want him to think that she cared about him, although it was indeed a little bit. Sigh. After getting along with him for a long time, she also realized that Huo Liancheng was not as cold as he looked on the surface. Sometimes, his words were really super shameless and did not match his usual image at all. Really? Huo Liancheng also smiled. His white teeth shone under the light. That smile was so beautiful that Jian Yun could not look away. She felt that if this continued, she would be seduced by Huo Liancheng's beauty sooner or later. She felt that those people from the Mings were really blind. They said that she relied on her beauty to serve people. She was chosen by Huo Liancheng to be the secretary of the CEO's office because of her beauty. In fact, it was the complete opposite. Huo Liancheng was the one who seduced her with his beauty every day. Don't smile at me every day. Jian Yun blushed. She forced her eyes away and said very seriously. Why? Huo Liancheng hooked his arm around Jian Yun's slender waist and raised his sword-like brows. Are you afraid that you will fall in love with me? Jian Yun smelled his breath and her face became hot again. She pursed her lips. Is there anyone as narcissistic as you? Then can't I smile? You said you can't be fierce and you can't be cold. Do you want me to cry when I see you? Huo Liancheng felt helpless. Okay, then you cry. Jinyun could not help laughing when she thought of President Huo, who always had a cold face, wiping his tears and looking at her pitifully like a child. However, before she could be happy for long, she saw Huo Liancheng's face come closer. The hot air came closer, and he gently held her lips. The elevator reached the underground parking lot and stopped. The elevator door opened, but neither of them seemed to notice that Huo Liancheng's rare, gentle kiss made Jianyun blush and her heart beat. There was no way to refuse. It was only when Jianyun saw the light outside the elevator from the corner of her eye that she gently patted Huo Liancheng's shoulder. Her big watery eyes blinked. "We're here." Huo Liancheng reluctantly let go of Jianyun. He looked down at her. She looked at him as well. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly gentle and ambiguous. After a long time, Huo Liancheng finally said, "Let's go home." Huo Liancheng drove. After Jianyun got into the car, she suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She was wondering if her attitude towards him had changed too quickly. A few days ago, she had argued and swore that she would never have any contact or relationship with him again. In the end, he got sick and went on a business trip. When he came back, she could not resist him. Would this make him feel that she was different from before, and again, or would he misunderstand that she was very coquettish and liked to play with men's feelings? Jianyun's heart seemed to be entangled with a mess again. Her awkward character began to struggle again. "What are you thinking about?" Huo Liancheng asked when he saw Jianyun's bitter face when she got into the car. "I am thinking that our relationship has always progressed so suddenly." Jianyun was silent for a while and still said,